a far-right extremist group.
I would use the term militia.
Their members blending in among us.
Includes elected officials. It includes people who have held office.
Newly released data showing a concerning footprint in Colorado.
We felt it was incredibly important to make the public aware of this really dangerous presence.
Tonight, we're taking an in-depth look at this group and how they've been able to draw Coloradans in.
Any number of people who hold or have expressed sympathy for or support for extremist ideologies in these positions of power, anyone, that's too many.
Elected leaders, law enforcement officers, military members, people in positions of power, members of a far-right group of extremists.
This is according to a new report from the Anti-Defamation League, which says data shows nearly 1,000 Coloradans have signed up to join the Oath Keepers.
Denver 7's CB Cotton spent all day digging through the data and speaking to experts about how this group has been able to recruit Coloradans.
I live in Denver. I've seen Stewart Rhodes many times on InfoWars. How can I help? This is one of many emails written, the Anti-Defamation League says, by people in Colorado wanting more information about the far-right extremist group Oath Keepers. Another email reads, "Hey, who was running the Colorado chapter now?" The Anti-Defamation League has released thousands of files, 5 gigabytes worth, from the servers of the group. Jason Van Tatenhove, who lives in Estes Park and testified before the January 6th Insurrection Committee about the Oath Keepers, admits he's one of thousands who found and joined the group.
I kind of saw it as an opportunity to write my own Hell's Angels kind of breakout novel. So, after talking with the family, we said, yeah, it's crazy, but, I've done quite a few crazy things in my life. So we decided to go ahead and do it. I worked for the Oath Keepers for about 1.5 years as their national media director.
He says he decided to leave about 5 years ago.
It just became too radicalized and moving more into racist ideology that I just couldn't stand it anymore. Not necessarily the group's ideology, but the people involved with the group and kind of their audience.
Now, an up-close look at that audience in this Oath Keepers data released by a nonprofit group of journalists last fall.
Since then, we had a team of investigators who were looking through all of the data, making sure we were matching names with public records so that we were identifying the correct people in the correct fields.
Jessica Reeves of the Anti-Defamation League says that painstaking work culminated with the ADL's report released this week. In it, the ADL says nearly 1,000 people signed up for the Oath Keepers in Colorado. Of those, 2 elected officials, 14 members of law enforcement, 7 military, and 2 first responders.
Any number of people who hold or have expressed sympathy for or support for extremist ideologies in these positions of power, anyone, that's too many.
We poured through the data, which spans across periods in 2020 and 2021. In it, we found messages from many Coloradans wanting to become an Oath Keeper. One woman wrote, "I live in Longmont, Colorado. Are there any chapters near me?" We cross-referenced that email and found it was written by a former veteran paramedic, an employee of a major healthcare system, one of many people in our state seeking information about Oath Keepers.
Colorado falls right in sort of the middle ground. We don't have the most per capita and we don't have the fewest per capita.
One of the more prominent Coloradans the ADL has tied to the group is Otero County Sheriff Sean Mobley. We reached out to him several times but got no response. But he did tell the Associated Press, quote, "Their views are far too extreme for me." He went on to tell the AP he distanced himself from the group in 2014.
It's important to note that the Oath Keepers have been an extremist organization with exactly the same ideology since their founding.
And that's a similar message we heard from Van Tatenhove, who made it clear the Oath Keepers have always been about extremes.
I think it's a very dangerous thing, and we need to be very aware of it and really begin to think critically again and really look at the sources of the information we're getting.
CB Cotton, Denver 7.
So as you heard there, Colorado falls right in the middle with number of members ranking the states. Now taking a closer look at this data, Texas has the most members, 3,300 members identified. California also about 3,000 members. Florida is third with more than 2,000. New York and Pennsylvania have the 4th and 5th highest membership.
A wildfire is quickly growing in Larimer County. It's about 15 miles north of Fort Collins. At last check, it was 600 acres and is 0% contained. Pooter Fire reported it at 120 acres just 3 hours ago. 60 homes have been evacuated. An overnight shelter has been set up at the Leaper Center in Wellington.
You are taking a live look from outside Buckingham Palace in London, where it is 5 a.m. and mourners have stayed there throughout the night, paying their respects to their beloved Queen Elizabeth II.
Buckingham Palace announcing today the Queen passed away peacefully at her home in Scotland, bringing her 70-year reign to a somber close. She was 96 years old.
Now, Elizabeth, of course, was not born to be queen, but she became heir to the throne at age 10 after the abdication of her uncle, King Edward VIII.
She would become queen 16 years later after the death of her father, King George VI. Over the next 70 years, she would oversee a changing country and a changing world around it. She would see 15 British prime ministers, including the newly elected Liz Truss, who she swore in just on Tuesday of this week. It would be the Queen's final public appearance.
Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her.
And with his mother's death, her oldest son, Charles, is now king. Now, in his first statement as monarch, Charles paid tribute to his mother. He says, "I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world." And funeral services for the Queen will be held at Westminster Abbey after a 10-day mourning period. She'll be buried on the grounds of Windsor Castle, next to her husband Philip, who died last year.
With the passing of the Queen and passing of the crown comes several changes. Today I chatted with Martin Rhodes, who is a professor at DU's Joseph Corbell School of International Studies, for his perspective on what happens next. He tells me although Charles has immediately become king, his coronation won't happen for up to a year. Some expect the coronation to not be as elaborate as the Queen's, as the monarchy faces public pressure to rein in on costs.
If you're referring to the cost of having the monarchy and the cost to the public purse, I think that's right. And I think that the cost of supporting a large number of royals is something that Charles is already aware of. And I think he's already said that he would reduce the number of people on retainers, so people being paid from the public purse to be royals.
King Charles is 73, the oldest royal to become king. His son William is now next in line to the throne.
And one change already noticeable after the Queen's passing, the lyrics to Britain's national anthem. It no longer is God Save the Queen. It is now God Save the King, which mourners could be heard singing outside of Buckingham Palace. God save the King. Also, Brits could see changes to their currency. The image of King Charles is expected to replace that of his mother on paper money and coins. A timeline for that, though, has not yet been announced. Now, the Bank of England says money featuring the Queen, yes, still will remain legal tender.
Denver 7 will continue to follow developments following the Queen's death, including funeral plans and King Charles's coronation. You can find all of today's coverage, including local reaction, right now at denver7.com.
New tonight, a man shot by Fort Collins police last week tonight is charged with 2 counts of attempted murder of a police officer. Investigators say officers shot Michael Cordova after he pointed a gun at them. This happened just after police arrested his father on a felony warrant for burglary. Cordova recovering in the hospital tonight. He will be booked into the Larimer County Jail once he is released from the hospital. Well, the Boulder DA is taking a rare step of indicting parents and business owners after 2 people were killed by a teen suspected of driving drunk.
The case is raising the question of how we can prevent tragedies like this going forward. And we've been talking to people grappling with that question. Here's Denver 7's Rob Harris.
This is heartbreaking to see that this is happening.
We sat down with Jocelyn Reimer. She works with victims and families for Mothers Against Drunk Driving. She says their main mission is to prevent underage drinking and impaired crashes, and that means holding those who enable them responsible. That's why she supports the DA's decision to indict in this case.
We don't see a lot of these types of cases that are pursued and prosecuted. So we really appreciate what the Boulder County DA's office has done and the diligence that they have put into this case.
Boulder Valley School District is grappling with how to prevent underage drinking and driving too. We weren't able to talk with district leaders directly, but we did get this statement to parents from BVSD Superintendent Rob Anderson. He says the district's protocol with suspected underage drinking is to pull the students aside, contact their parents, and establish a safe way to get home. Students who are found to have engaged in serious misconduct can be disciplined or suspended, and they often have law enforcement at dances and events to help manage students who seem to be using drugs or alcohol. But Dr. Anderson says it's a line they have to toe cautiously. He writes, "More forceful measures may have unintended consequences. For instance, we are aware that the measures we have already taken, including those mentioned above, have resulted in some students choosing not to attend the school event, something that is worrisome to us. In fact, we have heard of cases in which students have stayed at house parties and/or ridden around on party buses for the full evening." Parents and a party bus driver are among those indicted in this case. The district says it supports the DA's actions and that it's time to come together as a community to keep students safe. In the studio, I'm Rob Harris. Back to you.
This cold front means big-time relief for tomorrow, 30 degrees colder than today.
A message for his doubters. Russell Wilson responds to those who say his best years are behind him.
A flooded basement and a hefty bill.
Around $7,000. It's a lot of money. It's a very lot of money for something that I didn't do.
A Lakewood woman reaches out to contact Denver 7 after she says an installation crew punctured her water line.